add that in, perhaps could be
So you have to be careful. When you see the water rise and whatever.
How is that you
I think
consider what's their supply, what the current
maybe,
supply
let's see, we got
is
there.
almost.
I think it's beautiful.
Shopping,
It's like green
probably
and really
would
pretty.
want to do the genealogy.
Yeah.
You can get those.
Like between 2 and 4.
Minimum number of members. That's two days.
What's that? All right, can you hear us in Albany?
Yes.
All right, we can hear you too. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, there we go. We can see
All
it.
right. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello. Good morning.
You know, if anyone else who's there wants to come up to the table, they're welcome. No one has to, but you certainly
Yes,
welcome.
please. I have 3 people on each side, so it feels like they're very separated.
Yeah, like sitting in the back row.
All right, Ray doesn't want us to see him, huh?
No, he's behind.
I'm in a supporting role.
All right. Well, we will call our meeting to order. Welcome to our last meeting of 2019. Seems very strange to say that. Winter of 2020 is going to be upon us. And thank you to everybody for taking the time out to be here. And for those of you who traveled, thank you for traveling to be here. I do have good news in terms of our membership. We did recently receive appointments for 2 new members to the commission. So Dr. Jill Dooley is now formally a member of the commission, and also Superintendent Keith Corlett of the New York State Police, who was unable to be with us today, is filling the law enforcement spot that's been vacant for some time now. So I'm very happy to have you with us, Jill, and happy to have the superintendent as a member as well. Also, just to report in terms of membership, at the November meeting of the DNA subcommittee, Dr. Dwight Adams announced that he would be stepping down as chair, that would be his last meeting. He kept it under wraps very well until the meeting, having surprised a number of people. He did give us warning ahead of time, but didn't want folks to know ahead. But he chaired the subcommittee since 2015. And certainly, in my opinion, did a nice job helping the subcommittee deal with some, at times, contentious issues, and helping the subcommittee get information to this commission. I think was very helpful in making some of the decisions we had to make. So we did present him with a plaque and thank him for his service. The next chair of the subcommittee is going to be Dr. Bruce Weir of the University of Washington. And then also joining the subcommittee will be Dr. Jennifer Smith, Director of the District of Columbia Department of Forensic Sciences Laboratory. They both have decades of experience in the field of DNA and forensic science in different roles. If anyone wants curriculum vitae, we're certainly happy to supply them as well. So I think that's all of our updates. So we did send out an updated draft agenda for today's meeting. Does anyone have any questions or comments with regard to the agenda? And if not, do I have a motion to approve our agenda? All right, we have a motion. Judge, a second? David, all in favor of the agenda? Anyone opposed? It carries. We also sent out with the materials draft minutes from our September 18th, 2019 meeting. Are there any questions or comments with regard to the minutes from that meeting? And if there are none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? All right. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Next, we have our accreditations and laboratory updates. The first is informational. It's not for a vote. Is the Monroe County Crime Lab. And we have both a letter from October 1st of this year regarding a change in management, and also an email chain that I think starts October 2nd. But basically, Gail Conklin has been named the new DNA technical leader. Robert Visca, the hoping I'm pronouncing that right, the assistant DNA technical leader, Ellen Calhoun, who's been the DNA technical leader for some time, is retiring from the lab. Any questions with regard to that update? Next, we have the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, Forensic Biology Laboratory. There's a letter from October 28th of this year regarding a change in management, and then also a letter from December 9th of this year, just a few days ago, regarding a change in management. And as I read them, basically the Deputy Director of Forensic Biology, Marie Samples, retired November 12th. Meredith Rosenberg has been named Deputy Director, and she'll continue to fill the role of QA Manager until a replacement is found. Dr. Craig O'Connor will be taking on the role of DNA Technical Leader. Any questions with regard to those items? All right, next we've got the Suffolk County Crime Laboratory, and this item relates to an on-site surveillance visit in August. And again, as I read it, there were 3 nonconformities that were found. We did look at those at the September Commission meeting. As I read this, there's documentation from the lab indicating that they've since completed their corrective action plan, have submitted all of their objective evidence, and contend that they remain in compliance, and that ANAB has approved that they're continuing accreditation. So we have somebody here from Suffolk, don't we?
Yes.
All right. So any questions for Suffolk?
I just have a brief question about the non-conformity.
Maybe if you could just come right up to the table. If you can, just identify yourself, please. Thanks.
Yeah, I just have a quick question about, I think there were, looks like there were 2, the one that says during the assessment team noted that a lot, GS 600 Liz was used before the quality control was tested. And then there were a couple of other emails saying they may have been mislabeled and refrigerated. I just wanted to go through that. You may have gone through in September.
Yeah. It wasn't actually ever used on paper. It was used on a proficiency test. It was supposed to be marked as no for use in the system, and it got missed. So when they went to do the proficiency test, they actually used it, but it was caught after that.
So it's used only on the proficiency test itself? Okay.
And then it was on the actual test.
I did have a question. So I was just more interested in the process of receiving and who it is that receives the reagents, who it is that logs them into your system, who's responsible for putting the note that you can use it or not use it. Like what's your approach?
We have a quality control person in the section, and her responsibility is when all the paperwork comes in that we've received things in the mail. She checks all the paperwork, makes sure everything matches the batches we've received, and then she enters it into the system.
So you just have one person doing this task? So I think this refers to the same thing, yes. So in your corrective action report form, in the root cause investigation, and you talked about personnel factors. One of the general personnel factors that was remarked on was unintentional blindness. So could you go into that a little bit about?
So we had like a general title for, all right, it's human error. We made a mistake. It happens. And we were trying to give it a term, and we ended up on unintentional blindness, which was you don't think you were distracted, but you were going through, you may have been busy. So essentially it's a distraction, but it was a mistake. We made a mistake.
So I just thought it was the first time I saw that terminology, and I think it's great. I just wanted to get it out there and define that it's just one of those things where you're doing a job, and since this is just one person, they're accustomed to seeing the same task all the time. So maybe they thought that they saw it,
Right.
and then they didn't actually see it. So that's what I was thinking. would she be helped by someone to assist her
We
with
have
this?
now 2 contract employees that are in the lab. We also have a couple of people that are training, so we have now a check and balance system. We're also in the process of developing Qualtrics workflows to help with reagent intake. So we have a lot of things now that are in the works
Okay.
since this process.
Okay.
I would say that that terminology is something we've used in the past for different lab directors have looked at it, and there's like, if I'm thinking correctly, is the YouTube video where you're supposed to count people passing a basketball, and you're like, okay, how many times did the basketball? 5 times, and then the question is, did you see the gorilla suit?
Yeah.
You know, and then you watch it the second time, you're like, oh yeah, there's a gorilla suit running in the backdrop.
As you say, the answer is no, I didn't see the gorilla.
No, and then you rewatch the video, you know, so.
I think it's just good to point out that it's human nature, and even with the best of intentions, sometimes some things happen.
And there has to come a time, I think, as the quality manager, where I sit across from somebody and they look at me and they say, honey, I made a mistake. I don't know how else to word it.
Sure.
So
No, sure. I think
I
it's
give
a
them that
good
option.
description.
Yeah, and hopefully and I think, from everything we've seen, it is, but hopefully there's a structure in place, with sufficient review, so that understanding that's going to happen every review before anything went out.
Yeah.
There'd have to be a series of mistakes that hopefully wouldn't be within the realm of possibility.
And I think now the Excel spreadsheet actually pops up in red if it's not. So I created, have a formula that will allow it to alert them that they can't use it. So they put a little bit more effort into making sure that doesn't happen again.
And I think just one person is not enough to there always needs to be a backup for
Yeah.
tasks.
All right, any other questions? Thank you. Next, we have the Yonkers Police Department Forensic Science Laboratory. This item was before us. They had a June on-site surveillance visit with 2 nonconformities. We did look at the documentation with regard to the corrective action at our September meeting. My understanding of materials indicates that A&B has approved the continuation of the accreditation based on what's been done. I do think we have someone from Yonkers available if necessary. Any questions on this for Yonkers? Maybe you can just identify yourself for us. We have.
I'm Colleen Lockhart, Laboratory Director.
And if we could just ask you to speak up as well. We only have the 2 mics here at this end on this facility. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today.
So, just in terms of the trainees who were doing casework before the competency testing, is it part of the training program to have them be involved in caseload work with supervision before the training? Like, what's your protocol, and just trying to figure out whether it's consistent with what ANAB wants?
Previously, our protocol was that they worked under direct supervision, handling items of evidence until the inspection, which now the protocol is differently. They undergo a series of competency tests before they are allowed to work under direct supervision with items of evidence.
I did ask you this last time, right?
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm fine.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next item is the Onondaga County Center for Forensic Sciences. The laboratory did have an off-site surveillance, it says visit, kind of a contradiction in terms, an off-site surveillance visit. In September, there were no nonconformities found. ANAB has approved the continuation of the accreditation. So that's everything we have for accreditations or updates with regards to either full accreditation or mid-cycle visits. Next we have old business, and under old business, the first item we have is familial search. Do you have an update for us, Jill?
I do. As of today, we've received 35 applications for the familial search process. 11 of those have been rejected, 23 approved, and 1 withdrawn. So out of the 23 that have been approved, there have been 10 completed searches and 13 are in queue.
And by approved, just, we're talking about through the process of DCJS looking at the application and DCJS and state police looking at the sample from the application, just saying, yes, it meets the parameters set out in our regulations.
Correct. We've executed the MOU, and the state police will move forward with their testing, so there should be results, training for those.
But when you say completed, that means that the search has been done?
The search has been done, and we have conducted, so 9 out of those 10, we've conducted the training with the law enforcement agency and the district attorney's offices. We're pending scheduling the last one, the 10th one, right now.
And the way our regs are written now, whether results are obtained that would lead to the release of information or not, we have to do a training, and we do a training before we release the information. So we do a training, and then we either provide the, if there's names that are generated, or we tell them at the end of the training, there's nothing that was generated.
Of the 10, have any resulted in the release of names?
Yes.
How many?
I believe 3.
And do we know what's happened since that release? Do you follow?
Yes. So we are also obligated to get updates 6 months after the release. So we have received those. None of them have gone further than the update process.
I believe they're all active investigations.
They all are.
But have there been any arrests or
I'm not aware of any arrests or indictments yet.
So of the 35, 3 got information and have opened investigations. There are others in various steps in the process.
I think they had open investigations anyhow.
Okay.
3 received information.
And it's continuing.
Yeah,
okay.
And we've received updates on what they're doing to follow up on that information.
Well, that's 10%. That's not bad.
Well, in one of the cases as well, that did not result in the release of names, there has been a renewal request for that, which is also part of the process.
Okay. So it's come back into the system. So in your counting, will that now be number 36, or will you continue it as an reactivation of one? I mean, I'm just...
That's included in the 35.
It is?
Okay. It is.
But it as a separate number, is it an additional number?
There hasn't been a second search done yet on that. So
Okay, so it's
I don't know
not...
that we've crossed that bridge yet.
I'm just curious how it's going to get counted as a... I mean, yes, they can request a...
We can certainly, when we do the reports to this group, we can certainly separate them out. So,
Yeah, I'm just
yeah.
curious to see the productivity of an extraordinarily intensive, labor-intensive effort. No, I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying knowing
that's what
the
I'm saying.
productivity is important.
Yeah, we'll separate them out so that, if we get feedback on whether or not this reapplication process yields results. All right, any other questions?
Has the state police felt like this has been a burden, or have they been handling it?
Yeah, I think I'll let you answer that, Ray.
Come to the table. I know.
She'll have to repeat the question.
Speak up a little more.
Okay.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yes, this is Lydia, Ray. I was just wondering how your lab has felt the process has been. Has it been burdensome? Have you been able to handle it?
Well, anytime you bring in something new, it certainly takes a while to gear up. So we have a number of folks that are in or completed training, so we're expecting to kind of ramp up the speed of the process. Also recognizing that whenever you start something, you do a validation, you make some assumptions. I think we've had the opportunity now that we've done a few cases that there's some learning experiences that we may want to go back to the DNA subcommittee and refine the way we're doing the searching. Just to make it a little more productive. I don't want to go into any specifics, but certainly we'll be looking to make some improvements, and we believe our productivity will improve in the next year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
To that point, my recollection is that we did indicate that we were going to revisit it at some
Yes.
point. So, you know, if you intend to do that, Ray, it would probably make sense to do that as part of a larger process.
Certainly. Yeah, we'd be available for any suggestions to improve the process. But as we get some results and have some experience, we'll be able to provide some good data to be able to make some educated choices as we move forward.
Based on the numbers that you mentioned, you received 35 applications, and so you rejected 12 of them.
11, right. 11, one was withdrawn.
Okay, so 11 were rejected. What were the reasons generally?
Variety. One was for trying to identify unknown remains, and the way we drafted our protocol that didn't fit. One I think was from another state, if I recall, and we felt that wasn't squarely within the protocol. I think there was a couple that had samples that didn't fit the sample requirements.
Incomplete profiles or not have the YSTRs present. And that's currently what the testing protocol calls for.
You know, so things like the unknown remains, that may be something we want to revisit in terms of whether or not we want to include that in the policy or not. I think the things that we probably didn't anticipate at the time we were discussing this that are at least worth talking about when we revisit it. All right, thank you, Jill. The next item we have, again, just for informational purposes, is an update on investigative genetic genealogy, for lack of a better title. Anne, any update you can give us?
Yeah, I really don't have any new information to provide, so we're still reviewing documents in support of Parabon's validation, and currently there are no wet labs that are approved to do that kind of a SNP panel that's large enough to be used for genetic genealogy. So both of those things have to come together before it can happen on sort of more, on cases where it's only a New York State law enforcement agency that's initiating the request. Again, if it's a very serious or serial crime, and a New York State law enforcement agency wants to engage a federal agency, then there's a pathway to getting it done.
All right, any questions on that? All right, thank you. Next, under new business, we have the NYPD latent laboratory. This is just for informational purposes. We did receive information that they've received ANAB ISO 17020 certification with regard to their latent fingerprint lab. I don't believe we have any application from them, nor do they need to apply, as I read the statute, to the commission for that work. I think that's exempted by the terms of the statute, but they did, at least the information we have is they did apply for and receive NAB accreditation to do that work. So just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that. And certainly from my perspective, I think that's a good thing. I think it's something as a commission we've talked about before, that we would be more comfortable with that type of work being done in an accredited environment. We being DCJS have raised that with law enforcement agencies that we work with in the fingerprinting realm that use our SABIS equipment and have encouraged that. But just wanted to note it and certainly give NYPD credit for taking that step. So I don't know if there's any questions. I don't think they're here as far as I know, but. Next item we have our lab disclosures. The first one we have is the DCJS latent print laboratory. And I believe Charlie Clark, are you there in Albany? Maybe you can come up. Sure. Good morning.
Good morning.
So as I understand this, there's basically two issues being reported pertaining to the same analyst. Is that right?
That's correct.
So maybe if you can just briefly describe for the commission what happened here and what you've done.
Sure. The one of the nonconformances was level 2 nonconformance. The examiner, at the end of their shift, they're supposed to secure their casework, and in this instance, the examiner did not do that and left his case within his desk, which we found. And when we found the case in his desk and we reviewed the case, it also turned out that there was some protocol that he didn't follow as far as doing his analysis first and then launching searches. He did that in reverse order. So those were the two minor ones that we put into that nonconformance. After speaking, though, with Dr. Dooley, we realized that this probably should have gone into the declaration, the performance declaration, the annual performance declaration, rather than at this level. So next time we'll make sure that we do that. The other nonconformance was a proficiency test. The examiner had a false identification and a misidentification on his proficiency test. So with that one, we are actually going through, that examiner is currently off casework, and we are doing remedial training, and they've been going through that at the present moment. So when they're done with the remedial training, which could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, we will have him take a second proficiency test before he can go back on doing casework.
In terms of the past casework of this examiner, what, if anything, did you do?
We went back 6 months, actually 7 months. We reviewed all the caseworks. We didn't find any nonconformances with those. Everything was correct. All the paperwork was correct. His decisions were correct. We went back through to, I believe it was April. We went back as far as April, and everything was correct with his casework, so we didn't have any findings for that. And
these incidents correspond with a medical event and medical leave for this person?
Yes, that's correct. They did have a medical issue, so they will be. It happened during that time. Actually, the proficiency test happened during the time of the medical issue. So the cases that were previous to that were okay. The proficiency test was around the time of the medical issue. Yes.
In the 6-month look back, approximately how many cases were reviewed?
21 cases were reviewed. 10 of those cases were insufficient for comparison, so there was no comparisons performed on those. On the other 11 cases, those were all identifications, which were technically reviewed, and as well as an administrative review on those 11 cases.
And they were all accurate?
I'm sorry?
They were all confirmed?
Yes, they were all confirmed, yes.
Now, when you say administrative review, did that include looking at the process? You know, the one that you said you found in the desk, they didn't follow process by keeping it in the desk. And if I understood you, they didn't follow process because they did the 2 steps in the wrong order.
That's correct.
When you did that administrative review in those cases, did everything appear to have been done properly?
It was. We didn't do all 21 for that particular nonconformance. We sampled a half a dozen cases, and those all seem to be in order. The dates of the analysis, well, it's sometimes a little difficult because the date of the analysis is the same date as the cases, the searches that are launched, which is what happens. The examiner will perform the analysis, and after the analysis, he will launch the searches. So in all of the cases that we looked at, the analysis was performed, and then the launches were searched. The launches all have the searches have a computerized printout which has a timestamp. The annotations, which are supposed to happen beforehand, the analysis is handwritten and dated. So they were on the same date, but from the examiner, we assume that he followed the proper procedures with those. And so he said the one case that we found, he said, was accidental, but from what it looks like, all the other cases seem to be in order.
How many cases were in the drawer itself?
One case.
And so, just a question in terms of supervision, like, I guess how is it uncovered, and is there a process for reviewing cases? Because it sounds like it took a while for it to be uncovered.
No, what happened was the examiner had a medical issue, and he was going to be scheduled out. So when we found that he was being scheduled out, we were reassigning his cases. So we went into the secured evidence room to retrieve his cases, to reassign those cases that were assigned to that examiner. And when going through that, we found that one of the cases was missing from his assigned cases. So we then searched his desk area and found in his desk drawer one of the cases there. So typically at the end of every night they are supposed to go there, but I don't know if it was a long time before that was actually discovered. It was discovered when he was going to go out on medical leave.
Yeah, I guess the question is how long before he was going out on medical leave was the case in his drawer? Was it something that afternoon? Or I'm just curious in terms of...
I believe it was 2 days. His first day out was October 1st, and I believe the case was found on October 3rd.
And is there something in place, I guess, for whoever's supervising him or that operation to check that all the cases are placed back, I guess, where they're supposed to be in the storage place?
We will be doing that. We will be doing random checking. Like I said earlier, the examiner currently is not doing casework, so he's in remedial training. So that has not happened yet.
When is the additional 6-month review going to be conducted?
Well, that'll be I believe once he starts his casework. Is that?
3 to 6 months.
We have 3 to 6 months to do his remedial training, and then after that, we will review his casework once he begins to start again, if everything goes well and he passes his proficiency test.
Charles, this is Scott. I just want to understand something. When this individual was given a PT, do you have a policy of having it verified by another examiner, like in normal casework? In routine
we do.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, yes, that's exactly what we do. So it goes through routine casework. So the errors were found before the answers were submitted for his PT test. But we consider that still a failure, even though it was caught before the answers went out. But it was caught in standard case review.
So in all the casework that you reviewed in the last 6 months, that would have been reviewed by someone else who concurred with the original examiner?
That's correct.
So is it your opinion this medical episode has unfortunately, in this particular instance, been the reason for... I don't like you said, have you... Okay, no.
Yeah, if you want
I don't know how much I can go into.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. No.
On the medical piece.
Yeah. No.
I don't want to stop questioning.
No, I understand what you're saying.
It'd be fair to say that no decision's been made yet on whether or not this person returns to casework, that's pending the retraining and pending the proficiency test.
But that's correct.
Competency test, it'd be a competency test, not a proficiency test.
Right, yes.
How long has he been doing casework?
I believe he's been in the latent unit. He's 2 years now. Has he been 2 years? 2 years. Yeah. He was a 10-print examiner before he was a latent print examiner.
Yeah, just for background, I don't know if people know what Charlie's referring to, but we do fingerprint comparisons for purposes of returning criminal histories and civil and criminal context, job applications, arrests. And we have examiners on that side, but they're not touching latent. The only latent work is done within the lab. So he did work on the 10-print side doing fingerprints, and about 2 years ago he moved into the latent area. Any other? All right, thank you. And you'll keep us updated on what happens?
Will do, yep. Okay.
Next, we have Nassau County Division of Forensic Services. There's an email from September 30th. Do we have someone from Nassau? And if you can just tell us your name, please.
Hi, Karen Dooling, Assistant Director, Nassau County DFS.
Thank you for being here. Can you just give us a brief summary of what happened here?
Sure. When we moved to our new facility, We went online with some new procedures with Wi-Fi Plus and with our new thermocyclers. So this required a revision to our report templates to add those things to the boilerplates and statements. When that was done, an older version of the templates were pulled. And so this was noticed on August 30th and brought to my attention. And so the difference is kind of subtle for our serology statements. For blood, semen, and saliva, we used to say the presence of blood, semen, or saliva was indicated based on a positive presumptive test and font, which as time has gone on, serology statements have changed in the forensic community. And so our current statements are blood was presumptively found or semen was presumptively found. So that's the difference between the templates. And so what we did is we've fixed the templates, we have identified any of them that were in production. Since this initial memo, I've identified one more case that will need an amended report. So there'll be 7 amended reports, and preventative action in the future. We are adding the production date and version date in the file properties for internal tracking. Our process hasn't changed when we go online with something new and we update the templates. But what was different about this time is we were moving the entire facility. So, it's possible that might also have created a little more stress.
So 7 lab reports went out with phrasing that was not the most current phrasing you were using.
Right.
And you've identified those and either have or are going to reissue new lab reports on all 7?
Yep.
All right. All right, any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the New York City Police Department Police Laboratory. And this, I believe if I'm not mistaken, was this reported on at our last meeting?
It was reported, I think, prior to that meeting, and then this was the update closing it out. As you know, that with the NEB, we have to report significant events, but we don't have to close it out. That'll be done upon the surveillance visit, but the Commission still wants it to be closed out on their end, so that's the communication.
And what was the, just refresh my, what was the action you took? Was this the one where people read back, or am I confusing this with another?
There was another one for another laboratory, a similar incident, in the last Commission meeting actually, where there was the serial number was incorrectly recorded as well, but that was a different laboratory.
Okay.
So from ours, what we determined in the root cause was the possibility of intentional blindness because of focusing on the shadowing on the images, and it was technically reviewed and it was not caught, but they didn't have access to the digital images, the actual digital. So we've improved that, and what we also did, we improved the equipment that they had. They had the equipment that was a number of years old, so we had improved the equipment actually prior to the incident. We'd already moved forward with it, we didn't have the stuff in place at the time.
Okay.
So.
All right, any questions?
So it was actual misreading of a poor image originally.
It was, Jen, would you mind, I don't want you to misrepresent, because Jennifer Lady was my quality assurance manager who dealt with the investigation directly.
Interestingly enough, the serial number restoration analyst, as soon as it was brought to his attention, before he even looked at the evidence again, remembered the case because it was a very difficult case to do the restoration, and immediately knew that he had written the wrong number down. He had recognized what the number was, and he knew immediately that he had misreported it. So it was, as Dr. Neal was saying, there was a strange shadow over the 4 that made it almost look like a 7, and he was aware of it, trying to get the right picture. And even getting the digital photograph was difficult, but for whatever reason, he wrote the 7 down instead of the 4. So that's what happened.
And then the improvement you said you've made is that now the reviewer is going to see the digital image as well as part of the review?
Exactly. We've always allowed the reviewer to, if they didn't feel as though the photograph was adequate enough for them to do a review, they've always had the option to look directly at the evidence. But in this case, the reviewer didn't really think that there was a problem with the photograph. But since then, yeah, they've just been directly accessing the digital photograph or looking directly at the evidence if they think that that's better, and that seems to have been working much better now.
and improve the equipment to give
Yeah.
better digital photographs.
Yeah, the camera that was used when this happened was of a lesser quality than the camera that was installed after this was brought to our attention. So somewhere in between the two events, we had already upgraded the camera.
Any questions? Thank you. Next, we have the Westchester County Division of Forensic Toxicology. Do we have someone here from the lab?
Available there, Paul.
All right. I think it'd probably be a good idea to have them. This is a new one, right? Yeah.
Hello?
Good morning. Is this Chris?
Yes, it is.
You're on the phone with the Commission of Forensic Science?
Hi, Chris. It's Mike Green.
How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Good.
We're just looking at the non-conformance that was reported. I think we received it on November 26th. I just wanted you to just very briefly describe for the Commission what you found and what you've done.
So what happened was earlier this year, we changed from mailing out our reports to sending them out electronically via the Beast. Most of our cases work that way, but we have certain instances where the Beast can't handle the item descriptions of our evidence. So we generate those reports using Microsoft Word, and then we mail them. In this particular instance, the report was distributed electronically, and it didn't have an accurate item description. It called the samples blood samples, and they were actually hospital tube samples. So we reissued the report with the proper item descriptions.
How long did it take to reissue the reports?
The next morning.
And Chris, just to re-emphasise, the analytical results were the same. It was just the description.
Correct. There was the item samples. The item results were identical. It's just that one report called it a blood sample. The other report said it was a hospital sample and described tube color and any hospital ID that was on it.
And which one is the correct one? The hospital sample? Is that, okay. And what was in the hospital sample? Was it blood?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good holiday.
Thank you. You too.
You too.
All right, and the last report we have is the Suffolk County Crime Lab. Do we have someone from Suffolk? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, come on. Maybe if you could, this is an initial report as well. If you can just briefly tell us what you found and what you're doing.
Sure. This was an interesting corrective action for me because historically Suffolk County Crime Lab is not part of the police department, we're part of the medical examiner's office. So we allow the customers or submitting agencies to submit their drug evidence in whatever packaging they have available. And sealed security envelopes are typically what we receive, but in this case, the smaller East End towns use these plastic heat sealed bags that they heat seal at their own agencies. So when it got submitted to the lab, the evidence clerks check the seals, but they're not inserting a sharp object into these seals to make sure that the seal is intact. They look at it, they feel along the seal, if it feels intact, they go about their day, put it in the vault. So that's what happened in this case. The evidence was in the vault. It was taken out by the analyst on the day before Thanksgiving, and he went back to his bench to start the analysis, and when he looked at the packaging, it was empty. So the paperwork attached to the packaging said that it contained a hard white substance. He immediately notified his supervisor, who then immediately notified me. We looked very, very closely at the packaging, and there was a tiny separation in the heat seal. Only one heat seal around the whole package. So obviously that evidence fell out. There was no additional packaging within. So we did go back to our vault and search the boxes that it was contained in, and we eventually found small white rocks in the box. However, obviously we don't put them back in. So we made that found property, and then we immediately notified the DA's office and the submitting officer. So there is no evidence to be analyzed in this case. So it's a tricky corrective action for me because of budgetary reasons, I can't tell these small East End towns that they have to submit cases in sealed security envelopes, which is what I wanted to do. But now what we've instituted immediately was that any East End town that uses these plastic heat-sealed bags would have to double seal upon submission or be rejected. And if it's not double sealed when it gets to the lab, we have always had a heat sealer at the intake office that they'll have to do immediately upon submission. And then the analysts now will be checking it when it comes into the lab immediately, in addition to the evidence clerks. So
These are clear packages?
it was clear packaging, yeah.
Who brings, how do the envelopes get to you?
It was delivered
By a
by a
person?
police officer, yeah. So we are under the assumption that when he handed it to the evidence clerk, there was something in there and she saw it, and then she put it in the box in the vault, and from transfer from the box to the vault, they move it based on priority. So it was in a box for storage, and then it gets moved to a second box for analysis. And I think upon transfer to the second box is when it fell out.
So now it's presumed that when that presentation is made, that's when the determination will be made as to whether the heat seal is sufficient. Is that correct?
And are you documenting if you have to do that subsequent heat seal?
Well, now it's going to be in the manual that it has to have a double seal. So for the time being, for the corrective action, we'll be documenting that the double seals are intact for the next 6 months, but it's going to be a policy.
So you're going to tell the submitters?
We already did.
That,
You don't have that paperwork.
okay.
I just sent the letter this week. It went to all the East End towns and the police department that it is a mandatory requirement now upon submission.
Will you reject it if it's not a double? You will reject it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you said you were going to do a second seal.
They'll have to have a 2 heat
No,
seal.
But your own lab.
No, I'm sorry. Upon submission, it will have to have a double seal.
But if they bring it in and it doesn't have it, you're gonna have a machine right
have
there
one
and
already.
tell them, before you give it to us, use this machine, seal it in a second bag.
Oh, you're going to tell them, here's the heat
before
seal,
it's
you
evidence
do it.
number.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise, it'll be given back to them
Got
and they
it.
won't be able to submit
So I
it.
was confused about that.
I'm
I
sorry.
thought you were going to.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought
No,
too.
they're going to have to do it. It's going to be a policy for them.
When you say East End towns, you have the Suffolk County Police Department, and then you've got some smaller police departments, and
Yeah,
that's
the
what you're
Suffolk County
referring to.
PD uses sealed security envelopes. It's the little towns on the east end of Long Island that don't have the bags, that are not using them. And because of budget, they may not be able to afford those sealed security envelopes, so I can't tell them that they have
No,
to.
but having them sealing stuff right there and
Giving them
telling
everything that they
yeah,
need.
that sounds,
That's fair.
all right. Anything else? Thank you. All right, we have one last item, which is for executive session. So do I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters relating to either current investigations or matters that may lead to the appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or suspension of a particular person?
Sure, I have
All right, do I have a second?
Sure.
All right, all in favor? All right, we will be going into executive session, so I would ask anyone who's not either a commission member or commission staff to leave during executive session, and as soon as we're done, we'll let anyone who wants to come back in know.
You're back. I think you had a meeting.
I think now you're
Alright, so we're back in session. I will report that we did not take any formal action in executive session. With that, we've finished our agenda, so do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? All right.
Third, fourth,
All right. And just, I know I said in the beginning, but, I really appreciate all of the time and energy that everybody here puts into the work. It was, as someone just noted, our shortest meeting ever possibly, but, incredibly important work, and I think all of you, bring a very important perspective, and I appreciate, the time, the energy, and frankly, the professionalism that everyone here brings to the meeting and to the work. So, thank you, and I hope everyone has a great holiday, get to spend time with their families.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Same.